welcome to the Marina Skua Podcast. My name is Marina, I'm a knitwear designer and dyer based in the southwest of England, and in this podcast I talk about the projects I'm working on, mostly my knit design at the moment, but also some of the things I'm dyeing and some other yarny crafty projects. So to start off with, I'm going to talk about what I'm wearing. We've got a lot of hand-spun in this outfit, and we're definitely going with the kind of misty vibes. Like, as much as I really like bright colours, I also enjoy quite desaturated, low contrast colours, like colours that you can see through a mist where everything's kind of a little bit fuzzy. And that comes from including lots of natural wool and other natural fibre colours in my projects. So to start off with, we have this cardigan. This is the Snowland Cardigan by Jessica McDonald, and it's actually two different yarns, which you can see in very fine little stripes here. One of them is a hand-spun one in kind of reds and browns, quite dark colours, and that was from a bat years and years ago that was from Siobhan's Crafts. Usually Siobhan does colours that aren't exactly my jam. Lots of quite bright things and neons and high contrast and variegated stuff. But every so often she does something that I absolutely love. And she's also an absolute sweetie. And then the other yarn in here is a naturally coloured merino, which I think is quite unusual. I've not really come across much coloured merino. And it's this really nice warm sort of beigey colour. And so I alternated them every row, which isn't part of the pattern. The pattern's just for a single colour. And with this one, I'm not entirely happy with the fit. That's not the fault of the pattern. It's my own gauge problems. I didn't account sufficiently for the difference I was getting in my gauge with this yarn from the pattern. And also I didn't account for the difference between working flat, which you do for the body of the cardigan and for the setup of the yoke, and then working in the round. So you can see my sleeves here are quite tight, but I've got quite a lot of room in the shoulders, and I've got quite narrow shoulders, and so the sleeves kind of just need to sit in a little bit like that, because you can see it's a contiguous shoulder, so you increase along the shoulder to set up the body of the cardigan. And that was just, I made this cardigan quite a long time ago, and I didn't really pay attention to how much my gauge can change from working flat to working in the round, because most people knit a little bit tighter than they purl. So if you're working stockinette, then your purl stitches will often be quite loose. Not quite loose, but looser than your knit stitches, which will then lead to an overall looser fabric, versus if you're just knitting in the round because you're going around always working on the right side. But hey ho, we learn things. And then underneath here, I'll just take it off so you can see nicely. We have, this one's a fully hand-spun knit. This one is Cliff or Cleef. I can never remember, I'm terrible. It's Welsh and I don't speak Welsh. It's a lovely, lovely design by Teresa Shingler. And I was really playing yarn chicken with this all the way through. There are a couple of podcast episodes from a while back when I was working on this, and I was working with a yarn that was slightly chunkier than specified by the pattern, and also I just had less of it than I was meant to, so I had to make quite a few changes. Down the side here, I think I changed the number of stockinette stitches, and I changed the body length, and then the pattern is meant to have a nice bit of ribbing to finish off the edge, but I ended up just doing a couple of rows of ribbing here just to kind of stop that edge from curling in. But despite that, I really love this one. I think it's turned out so pretty, and this yarn was quite a blend of things, which is the case with a lot of my hand spun. There was definitely some avocado dyed fibre in there, so you can't really see, but it's got a very slight pinkish tone to it. Overall, it's mostly beige. There's also some fawn alpaca in here. There's a bit of, I think there's some blue-faced Leicester and possibly some mohair. I don't remember entirely. But I like to chuck a lot of different fibres into my blends because I really like the yarns they create. And it was a 3-ply yarn, quite a chunky one. Definitely chunkier than Aran, and this pattern is written for an Aran yarn. But yeah, I like a 3-ply yarn for cables and things where stitch definition is important. I think just that having that extra ply versus a 2-ply mean that the cables can show up really nicely. And then this here, I'll show you my skirt. So we've got some pleats here, a waistband here, and then more pleats at the back and a little hook and eye closure with a zip. And this fabric I spun from my skewer blend fibre, which I'll talk more about in a minute. And so I used a dyed warp and an undyed weft, and spun up the fabric, wove it up on my rigid heddle loom, and then sewed it into a skirt. If you're interested in that process, there is a video on my Patreon where I show the process of various bits of that project, from warping up the loom and dyeing the fibre before that, and the process of actually making the skirt. And the post about sewing the skirt also includes a sort of schematic recipe type thing where you can calculate out how to make a similar skirt if you've got a similar amount of fabric from your measurements. It's all quite loose because a lot of it depends on the amount of fabric you have, because often with hand woven fabric you have much narrower width than most commercial fabrics. But I'll include a link to that post down below so that you can find that if you would like. Yeah, so those are my hand spun things. So I will just show you the fibre that I've been playing with here. So these two, so we've got one that is a nice kind of greeny blue, quite dark and low saturation, and then this bright red section with a little bit of red at the end there. They're kind of reversed, and then this one's mostly like warm yellows, but then with some warmer greens going into darker, cool, almost tealy greens, but not quite. That bit's almost teal. And I'm dyeing up these. I periodically do a shop update with hand-dyed wool top. And this specific one I'm doing for Tetbury Wool Fair, which is a show that's somewhat local to me. It's a new one-day show in Tetbury up in Gloucestershire. And I say up, I'm further south than that. It's a new show and I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm going to make sure that I've got a nice little bit of fibre there. So if you are vaguely in the area, I'd love you to come by and see what I've got. There are going to be some other lovely vendors, and it looks like it's going to be a really sweet event. And I'm going to have more fibre. So I've just got these 4 colours at the moment because I've got more in progress that are kind of on the way. So then this one that's lots of like tealy, greeny, verging on yellowy bits with some little bits of lilac, which don't show up super well there, but they're really pretty. I think this one would spin up really nicely and be a little bit mermaidy. And then possibly my very favourite. Look, I like my warm, coppery, reddy, purpley, goldy tones. this would just work perfectly with what I'm wearing. So these two are on my feather blend. I didn't actually tell you what was in the skewer blend. I'll come back to it. This is a really nice lustrous blend. So it has Blueface Leicester, Wensleydale, Teeswater and Shetland in it. And the Blueface Leicester, Wensleydale and Teeswater are all fairly lustrous fibres, and in this blend they're all white. And then there are streaks in here. I don't know if you can see, but there are natural streaks of darker Shetland, which just gives it a little bit of warmth and depth, which I really, really enjoy. And so it's quite a sleek blend, but it does spin up with a little bit of a halo, which I love. And then back to the skewer blend. I've talked about this one a lot because I absolutely love it. I created this blend to just be delicious to spin. So it's got Teeswater, Cheviot, Jacobs, Manx Lochtan and Dorset Horn. I got them all. And this is the blend that I used for my skirt. And this here is what it looks like undyed. So you can see it's really nice, warm grey verging on brown. And so the warmth in there is mostly from the Manx Lochtan, which is a really nice sort of cinnamon brown colour, and it's beautiful. And then for the skirt, I used it with so I used the undyed for the weft, and for the warp I used an orangey red dyed on top of that, which then combined together just gives this really lovely earthy, heathery effect, which I really, really enjoy. So any of those that don't sell on Sunday, so that's Sunday 20th of October, if you are about and are watching this in time, it'd be really nice to see you there. And any of those fibre that don't sell at the show will be going on my website, and my patrons will get first access because that's the way I do my shop updates for limited edition things. They get access for 24 hours before everyone else, just to kind of manage number of people on my website. And yes, if you want to hear about that, you can take a look at my Patreon or sign up to my newsletter, which is where you can hear about everything I've got going on. And then on to my knitting projects. Let's show you my actual finished thing first. Now, I think quite a few of you have been fairly excited about this one based on responses to the previous episodes. So this is a cardigan I've been working on for a while, and I finally have a name for it. It is the Valley Roofs cardigan, which incidentally was my original working title for it. I often have a working title and then rename it once it comes time to sort of start publicising it and everything. But Valley Roofs is the title I was using when I was, working on my charts. I use a software called Stitch Mastery, which I absolutely love. It's just fantastic for creating charts, and is one of the very few pieces of software left in my life that's not software as a service. It is a one-off, fairly modest fee, and then you just get to use it forever. Not sponsored, just love Stitch Mastery. Excellent piece of software. Really great. Whether you're a knitwear designer, whether you just want to play around with stitch patterns, it's great. And so the Valley Roofs refer to this cable pattern, so you've got a valley and then a little roof in it. And so this cardigan is inspired by the farm in South Devon, which is where the yarn is from. The farm is called Gullet Farm, and it's quite close to my grandma's, so it's an area that is quite close to my heart. And this is part of a collection I'm working on where all of the designs are inspired by the yarns that they're knitted in, and it's collection using only yarns that are produced, grown, processed, spun entirely within the southwest of England, and they're all natural colours, completely undyed, just colours as the sheep have grown them. And the collection is going to be published mid-December. I know quite a few of you have been waiting for an announcement. I don't have an exact date yet, but we're getting there. And the collection is made possible by a bit of funding from the South West England Fibre Shed, which is an organisation I'm part of and is doing excellent work to try and build up and reinstate regional textile networks, which is something that is really important to me. I love working with local fibres, getting to know the people who have provided the fibre that I'm working with, and knowing that my yarn miles are relatively low, and just often from an ethical and environmental point of view, it's a really great thing to do. So this cardigan is currently in test knitting. If you're speedy and want to test knit this, the test knit is probably still open by the time you're watching this. Do check on my website, I'll put a link below, and you can have a look at the call for test knitters and see if you think there'll be time for you to knit it. And then it'll all be ready for the release of the collection in December. It's a DK weight yarn. I keep forgetting to mention my yarn weights. And yeah, just nice saddle shoulder. And of course it's got pockets. And I will be talking about this one in more detail and showing you what it looks like on when the collection is ready to be released. So next up, we've got some works in progress. I have been knitting a lot. This has been the case for a long time and shall be the case for a while longer, and then I will probably take a break and do some interesting different things. So this yarn, I can't remember if I've talked about it before. It's Appledore Aran by John Arbon Textiles. This is my own custom colour, which I've designed it. I designed it. I spent a while playing with the colours they have, because the Appledore colours are all blended up from quite a small palette of colours of top, and then they get blended up in different proportions to make their range of colours, which is why they've got such amazing depth to them, and they've got that kind of tweedy effect. So this is called Fallen Leaf. Appledore Aran is out now, which is very exciting because it's just the perfect yarn to be an Aran weight. I've worked a lot with the DK weight before, and I'm having so much fun with this. So this shade I am designing with. I've got my ball that's wound up because it was attached to this, which is not finished, but I love it. I properly love it. This is the design I'm working on. It's going to be called Fallen Leaf. All of this has been done since the last time I talked to you. I'm going to put it on, even though I'm going to swelter, just so you can have a look at what it's like. So we have, I think it's probably the most Marina thing ever. We've got the orange. We've got nice diagonal cables that are a little bit swoopy. We have a panel of moss stitch. We have stockinette down the sides. We have quite directional, structural, diagonal details. We've got a nice bit of 2x2 rib. The neckline is not done, and there are no sleeves yet, but we'll get there. So I actually did a little video for my patrons talking about the design process of this, like at the very early stages. So when I was still sort of setting up the shoulders and around the neck and everything, showing how I go less from a sort of inspirational point of view, but more the technical point of view of how I develop a design in the early stages. And it's just kind of a bit looking at my charts and my swatches and my spreadsheets, because there are lots and lots of spreadsheets, And yeah, so if you're interested in that, I will include a link to that. And I do record a bonus video every month for my patrons. But this one I would love to be working on right now, but it is currently very temporarily on hold while I work on this, and that's literally all I'm going to show you of that. It's from a magazine. I'm not meant to show it to you, but I'm having loads of fun with it, and I'm very glad that I haven't had to put aside the orange jumper to work on something that I would enjoy less. So this project is in my Mendip DK yarn. I can show you the yarn because this is my yarn. It's a DK weight. It's woolen spun, and this colour is ore on the cloudy base. So Mendip DK has it's in a 4-ply and a DK weight, and each weight has a white version and a grey version called Sunny and Cloudy, and I dye the same colours on both so that you get pairs of colours, and the cloudy colours tend to be quite a lot moodier and they've got a bit of heatheriness to them, while the sunny colours tend to be quite bright and clear. But that has a serious deadline attached to it, so I am going to be working on that until it's finished, and pretty much nothing else. Next up is a project I've picked up after quite a break. I did show this one probably a few years ago now. This is an old cashmere jumper that was my dad's. It was being got rid of because it had a couple of tiny moth holes in it, and I mended the moth holes. They were really little ones. They weren't sort of properly, it was also put in the freezer for a long time first. Important. Mended the moth holes. They were still visible because it's a very fine knit. And so I decided to embroider autumn leaves over the areas that have been mended. And it's just chain stitch embroidery with a little bit of back stitch for some of the line work. And so I think I did the oak leaf first and then the rowan leaf on the shoulder. I quite like how that one sits. And I had started this sycamore leaf, which you can't really see there, but it's becoming something. And so for this, I'm using random little odds and ends of yarn that I dyed years and years ago for a workshop I was doing, attending, not teaching, on freestyle crochet, and I was doing lots of sort of lichen-y, mushroomy inspired things. So I dyed up some little bits of yarn for it. Some of it is quite tangled. And these, it's just a lamb's wool single. It's actually a weaving yarn. And so I'm just using these, and the singles are slightly annoying because they come untwisted a bit as you're stitching, but that's fine. It does mean that by twisting or untwisting you can kind of control the thickness of the thread that you're stitching with, because if you untwist it a bit it gets fatter, whereas if you twist it, it gets a little bit more compact and sleek, which can be useful if you are a slightly imprecise stitcher, which is me, because embroidery is not, I have a long list of crafts and embroidery is not high up in the ranking of how skilled I am. And so I just thought I'd show you this one, partially as motivation to get on and sort of finish off at least this leaf so then I can wear it. But I think it's going to just be a bit random with a couple of leaves on it. So I think I need to do some more leaves, and then like it'll look like a thing. But there are plenty of little darned patches. I don't know how well you can see on the elbow there. By the look of it, I think my mother did that. That's not my darning. It's just different. This will kind of be an ongoing one. I think once I've, finished the bits I'm working on, I can then just add more as I feel like it. And it's going to be a slightly strange garment, but I just love how the colours of the leaves work with this teal blue, which is a colour I really love. So yeah, just a bit of a tip if you are not very good at invisible mending, but also don't really like the look of the visible mending thing that's become quite trendy, where you just do big darned patches in a contrasting colour or various other ways of doing it. You can just embroider over the top of it, and that's not a revolutionary idea, but I think it's quite a nice one. So it might be worth giving a try. And then, possibly the last thing I'm going to show you, as I cast about just to make sure I haven't missed anything, is a lovely, lovely book I received. This is Wildyon by Imogen Brightmoon. Imogen is a lovely weaver and a friend of mine. She creates beautiful woven pieces on quite a large scale, sort of wraps and blankets, and ones that are can be displayed hanging up. And she has spent quite a long time developing her way of approaching yarn. She spins most of her own yarn, but in the past I worked with her, like quite a few years ago, I worked with her on a collection called the Selkie, where she was preparing her fibre blends and then sending me bats, and then I spun them up. And I didn't keep track of how much yarn we made, but it was kilos. It was a lot of yarn. And so last year Imogen approached me if I'd like to do a little bit of knitting, just for some swatches for this book. And honestly, this book is so lovely. Just these little sections of just beautiful collected objects. And so the book is about creating yarn that isn't sort of conventional yarn that's been designed for knitting garments, where you're aiming for consistency and strength and the correct amount of twist. It's more about working in a sensory way and embracing texture and the natural qualities of the fibres that you're working with. And it's kind of a guide to doing that and to create yarn as a way of self-expression. And it's got the most beautiful photography. It's got Imogen in her workroom. And it was really, really lovely to work on some of the little samples in here. I'm just trying to find some of the ones I did, because obviously I don't have them with me now. Look at that photo. Look how wonderful it is. So yeah, if you are interested in spinning yarn, but aren't going for it from a sort of technical point, well, not that this isn't technical, but it's is more freestyle, and I love this one. This was really nice. Yes, so it's not that it's not technical. It gives you a lot of tips for trying to create the yarn that you would like, but it has various exercises, and it will tell you how to create a yarn that embraces natural fibres and texture, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful book. And so, yeah, I just thought I'd share it because I know a lot of you who are spinners also enjoy some natural fibres and natural colour. And so I thought that might be of interest. So it's been published by Batsford, and I'll see if I can add a link below. I believe it's on Amazon as well, so you should be able to get it there. Or I know that some yarn shops are beginning to stock it. So yes. Just before I leave you, I will give you a very quick look at what's going on in the garden. It's just going to be the briefest of glances because the garden is far past its best, and I just wanted to show you how things are looking before we lose all of the leaves, which is bound to happen the next time we get some strong winds. So there are a few things still in bloom. We've got some lovely leaves turning. And there are some berries beginning to come out that are looking lovely. And a nice covering of leaves beginning to develop on the lawn, which we'll probably just leave there over the winter for habitat for small creatures. Yeah, so that's all I've got for now. If you want to keep up with me in between episodes, you can follow me on Instagram. And you can check out my Patreon. And also, in case you haven't seen it, if you've had any problems with your wrists when knitting or crafting, I've made a video about that, about tips that can help you recover and also prevent injury in the future. So if you are interested in that, I will add a link to it just here. And hopefully I'll catch you next time. So bye bye.